Gary, this weekend, back to a club that you managed relatively briefly, but relatively recently as well. They're on quite a journey, aren't they, that you've been a part of?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a player there. I think, going back in there all them many years ago and having sort of 2-3 seasons there as a manager, of course, had a brilliant time there and we always look back with a lot of fondness, myself and the staff that worked there at the time. And some staff still at Birmingham that I worked with as well. So the recent stint, of course, was slightly different. It was a little bit of an anomaly in terms of how many times would you go in for 8 games, but it felt like the right thing to do. I spoke publicly about that. I think the best thing, really, and the most important thing, that Birmingham are on the up as a club. I think there's got a lot of positivity around the place. I think the new owners have spoke a lot about their plans for the future and not just their plans, but actually backing that financially and putting that into action. And of course, what that's done is put a very good team on the pitch, which I think everyone always talks about. The investment and the players, but you also have to be coached very, very well, and I think they've done that under Chris. I think he's done a fabulous job. A little bit of pressure in terms of trying to get them up last year, but I think they're really well structured. So I think a lot of credit all round, but that's where the credit ends, and that's where, as a position manager, of course, I have to go there and try and fight for a result for our own club and our own team, and that's the most important thing for us.
And do you have to go there without looking at the context of the start of the season? You have to look at this game in isolation.
I don't think. I think the context of the season is always relevant. I think you always, as a manager, you always try and think about where are your players at, what's the feeling, what's the form like, what do we think we can do, particularly away from home. I think some teams are they have the squad to be able to approach every game exactly the same. I think we've shown last season that the way for us to get results in this division is to be very flexible, to be very versatile. Of course, we have to do things a little bit better than we've done previously in the last couple of games, and particularly away from home, I think. But it's a new season. We're hoping to get some players back for this game. So certainly the players have trained really, really well all week, and we're hoping to take that into what we know is always going to be a tough game at St Andrews in front of a very vociferous fan base, which I know all about, and that's our challenge.
Given you did start the season with quite a few players on the injured list, do you anticipate, even just with players coming back, your life will get easier selecting a team that you're happy with, and that the team will be even more competitive as it goes on?
Yeah, I think so. I think certainly, I'd expect the expectation up until the international break and beyond is that, bit by bit, we'll start getting players back in. Of course, we'll have to manage what we think is a suitable return to the squad and the team for some of those players. But of course, some of those players are brought in to help us improve and improve in different ways. And we did a lot of that work pre-season as well. So I think easier in as much as we'll have more options, harder in as much as trying to select the right options, which of course isn't going to be to everybody's liking and isn't going to be sort of the right thing for every single player. But ultimately we're a squad. We want to win games of football. We know the strength of that is going to be in the 20 players that are in the squad for the weekend and beyond. So we need that competitiveness. We need some of those players back. I think we've seen that in the first few games, and but we've still been competitive. I think that's the key. We made one mistake against Portsmouth. That becomes a defining factor. We have chances. We make a mistake late on, even though we possibly could argue that first half we maybe should be a couple of goals down, but we get ourselves back into a great position and late on to make a mistake. So they're the fine margins. We saw that last year. The fine margins went for us sometimes. At the moment, the fine margins have gone against us, but that's what it is.
I suppose on the fitness front, would it be fair that Brian and Shemi are perhaps the closest, and also we saw Nick Prelitz playing on the 21s game this week as well? So.
Yeah, I think all three of those, for different reasons, are obviously very close to being available. Again, I think it's quite difficult depending on who's done what, who's played what games. If you start with 3 players that haven't played for a while, then you run the risk of having to make 3 changes, pretty early in the second half potentially. So that, I think you always put that all into the melting pot. We'll try and make good decisions. We've got 3 games this week as well. We've got a Saturday game, we've got a Wednesday game and a Saturday game. So again, you could save some for Wednesday, played them a lot of minutes Wednesday, it might be that they then struggle to be available for Saturday. So I've got to balance that off. I've got to sort of have a little think about how best to use that within the context and the framework of the game and the tactics that we think we need, both at the start of the game and then towards the end of the game, you know, because I think the game becomes in 2 or 3 separate stages. So, yeah, we'll try and make those decisions, but certainly those 3 are probably the closest out of everybody.
And I suppose as we edge closer to the international break, the likes of Kieran Brown, Luke Harris, or Romney, are they likely now post-break? Is that the way it's looking?
Yeah, I think Kieran's a little bit further away from that. I think probably more likely to be closer to the second break, I would say. I mean, somewhere in between maybe. I think Ola's a long way away from that as well. I think you've probably got Luke Harris in that next batch of players that you know, won't be a million miles away before the break, I think. But certainly after the break, I think we'll be ready. Like I said, I think the likes of Ola, the likes of, I mean, JJ's now out with an injury after the 21s game the other day, which is a shame for him because he's been making really good progress. And like you say, Brownie, I think is, you know, I think there's too much. I think if we put too much expectation on that and rush him back after being out for quite a long time, we run the risk of that being another injury. So we just have to make sure we're a little more sensible.
On Birmingham, Jay Stansfield is sort of always among the headlines, and he's got 3 and 3 so far this season. But it'd be rude to focus just on him when they've got, you know, various attacking threats.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Jay's a young player that I obviously worked with when I was there, and he's a pleasure to work with. You know, his energy, his work rate for the team, his unselfishness, but of course his quality in the final third is pretty obvious. But listen, they've got other players. Damari Gray's a player that I worked with my first time at Birmingham, and to get a player back like that, you know, with that quality, you know, the likes of Keshi Anderson as well. You know, there's a lot of good players in that team. So, you know, I don't think we'll focus necessarily. Well, look, you're always aware of individuals, but I think you know, we're not focused on that. We're focused on what we have to do as a team to make life difficult and cause Birmingham some problems as well, because that's what the game's about. And but like I said, we'll be respectful of any team that have got good quality players.
And the perennial question at this time of year, I suppose, just over a week to go before the window closes. Ins and outs, how are those sort of things looking?
Yeah, again, you know, there'll be some outs, I'm pretty sure. I think there's been some opportunities for players to go out and play regular football. For some of those players, of course, that has to work for them as well. You know, as a club, we obviously want players to go to the best opportunity for us financially as well. But it doesn't always work like that. So, but I'd imagine there'll be quite a few who want to play regular football before the window shuts, and of course on the back of that, you know, we'd like to make 1 or 2 more signings. Like I said, it's, you know, whether we're capable of doing that. What I would say is, I said it before, the club have been incredibly supportive, but of course we're working around slightly different parameters to some of the clubs in this division, so it has to still work for us. But hopefully we can get 1 or 2 players in still.